Hi, Lee. Welcome to our show.
Hello, Savannah. Welcome to our show.
We're sitting across from each other. And by that, I mean not across from each other. This is
side by
feeling
side,
odd.
side by side. Yes, I can tell your body language is that you feel quite uncomfortable.
But it's for a good reason, because today we have Donovan McAbee with us, which I'm so excited that you're here.
Welcome, Donovan.
It's good to be here.
Great to have you with us.
And this is hitting me now. When you guys go to restaurants with your wives, are you side-by-side people or across people?
Mm.
Well, of course you're across if it's just the two of you.
That is not a given.
What?
Some people are side-by-siders, but yes, so you are an across person.
Well, of course, like normal people.
Like normal people.
We vary.
Oh,
I knew it.
Sometimes we are across and sometimes we are side by side.
And what's the determining factor?
How comfortable the one side is.
Okay, so if one side has like padding or...
Right, like a bench seat with padding, then we both like that. And so sometimes we'll just sit side by side.
And then do you talk to each other like this?
Mm-hmm.
That's boldly. That's bold. I love it.
well, what are you? I mean, you're just asking the
across
questions.
every time.
Yeah.
I love that you're like...
Clearly, given that you think it's bold, that the side by side is bold, you are across from. You should try it.
I should try.
Should try it someday. Really break those bounds in the marriage boundary there of seeing what can happen by sitting side by side in a restaurant.
Oh, Lee, actually, I would love to try it just once just to see what happens. But I think it's like this right here doesn't feel as natural as this feels. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Just have like a good
That
combo.
natural eye contact where you're looking across from.
But sometimes when you have more intense conversations, it's better not to be across from each other.
Because the intensity.
Yeah.
So do you and your wife just have intense conversations all the time at restaurants?
No, at restaurants we don't. But I know that there have been occasions where we've learned that it's actually better if we're side by side or sometimes simply walking side by side.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. I like that. Yeah.
We walk across from one another. It's really awkward.
Oh my gosh, that could be imagine. Oh my gosh, well, this is going to be so fun. Want to just start off not reading any reviews because I feel like it would be weird to read reviews about us with a house guest.
Yes.
But we're just trying this. You're our first one.
Our very first guest.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
So don't screw it up.
Well, you can only go up from here?
Yes, so true. McAbee. But I do want to listen to what you guys are reading, watching. What are you listening to lately? What are the vibes?
Me first.
Yes.
What I'm reading right now, and I did not prepare this. It just literally is what's happening.
Well, it's not a test.
Well,
You're
I'm rereading a selected poetry of Seamus Heaney, the famous Irish poet.
Nice.
And I've started, so I grew up evangelical, which I'm guessing we'll go into later, maybe?
Yes, we will. Mm-hmm.
But obviously, like scripture memorization was a big thing. And lately, I've been getting back into the practice of memorizing poems. And there are a couple of his I knew I wanted to go back to. And the other day I was at a used bookstore and I saw one there, even though I already have 3 or 4 different versions of selected and different, you just want to spend that money, burning a hole in your pocket at a used bookstore.
That's right.
And when you have so much of it as a professor.
Oh, I make bank.
Poet.
Literally humanities professor, poet. I mean,
you're printing money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
So you have your poetry book,
yes,
by Seamus.
Yes, I get.
Are you doing any brain rot? Like, do you get on TikTok or anything?
I spend too much time probably on social media lately because I've got this book that I feel like a dancing circus monkey at the moment on social media.
Yes, that's the way it is.
Buy my book. Yeah. Come hear me.
I know.
Well, I should learn to juggle bowling balls and flaming things probably to get more.
You really would get a lot of attention if you did that on social.
It's true.
I know it's hard. Well, good one. Lee, what are you getting into? What are you reading lately?
A listener of No Small Endeavor named Travis Holland wrote in from San Antonio, and he told me about this book by Alfred Lansing, who I don't know Alfred Lansing, but it's about Edward Shackleton. Do y'all know his name?
The adventurer.
So many things I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So I knew a little bit about the adventure, but I didn't really know much about the adventure. So he was one of the last great adventurers from England who decided in 1915-ish was when they started. He wanted to take a crew down to Antarctica and do the first transcontinental adventure of going across with dogs, Antarctica. And so he takes a ship, a specially built ship down in there, they never get close. And the ship is ice locked and then finally crushed by the ice floes. And then for like a year and a half, they're just trying to get out alive. And it's one of the most incredible survival stories I've ever read and ever heard in my life. It's just unfathomable all they went through. And so the ship was named the Endurance, and the name of the book is Endurance. And so it's really remarkable.
I actually seriously think that this might be one of our first overlaps.
How so?
Outside of theology, I feel like theology, we will read some of the same things, but in general, I feel like we don't really have a ton of overlaps. I would definitely read that book.
Oh, yeah. I think you would like it a lot.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
Okay, you guys, I'm reading a book that is called The Frozen River, and it is about this midwife in the 1800s in Maine who...
Is fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction, but they said it's based on kind of true stuff.
Okay.
So I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But she's a midwife who basically helps solve this murder in her town, which I'm actually very into.
What?
Solve a murder in her town.
It's like Agatha Christie, the midwife.
It is. And you just learn a lot about honestly how horrible it would have been to be alive.
To live in the Midwest? Is that what you're saying?
In Maine.
Maine. I'm sorry. That's right.
In Maine, but also so long ago.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I really think I'm a modern girl.
Yeah. You are definitely a modern girl.
It would be this time or forward for me. I wouldn't ever choose back. I don't have it inside of me.
Or I, on the other hand, often think, I was definitely a 19th century guy and I just missed my time.
Oh my gosh, Lee, you would have just been hitting logs, making your fire, dying at age 30.
Yeah.
I like antibiotics too much.
Yeah, I do like antibiotics.
It's just keep me from antibiotics forward because I know a childhood illness would have taken me out.
Hello?
Yes.
I know. We all need that penicillin.
Yes.
So that's on that. Hopefully you guys get some good recommendations. And on that note, let's start the show. Welcome to the Subtext, where we go beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious. I'm Savannah Locke.
I'm Lee C. Camp.
If you like what you're doing, great job. If you like what we're doing and want to help us get the show in front of more people, please do us a favor by following and rating it wherever you listen. If you leave us a review, we might read it on the show. Give us 5 stars and hype us up. If you want to watch full video episodes, you can find that on YouTube and Spotify, and you can follow the show at The Subtext Show, me at Savannah_Locke, and Lee at Lee C. Camp. And if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, just DM us on Instagram at The Subtext Show. All right, Lee, today this episode is not about us.
How about that? That's good.
We have a star of the show. His name is Donovan McAbee, and he was one of my professors from college at Belmont University. In fact, I believe I took your first class you taught.
You might well have, yes.
Huh.
Flannery O'Connor.
It wouldn't have been the first, but that was still my first year.
Yeah, it was your first year. Yes.
Theology and literature class.
Theology and literature. I also took a symposium with you. Still don't know what the word symposium means.
We should have covered that in the first. Maybe you were absent.
That sounds right.
Maybe absent in the mind, but present in the body.
That
that happens sometimes.
That also sounds like a possibility.
It happens to professors as well as students, I promise you. What did I talk about for the last hour? I have no idea.
Literally, who knows? But you were also, outside of being a professor at Belmont University, you are also a poet.
I am.
And you just wrote your debut. It's not a novel.
No, it's a book of poetry, collection of poetry. Yeah.
Well, I know it's a book of poetry, but I didn't know what you called it.
Yeah, just a collection.
Your debut book of poetry, which you are calling a geriatric.
I call it my geriatric debut because I'm 46 years old.
Donovan, that is young.
Is it though?
Yes, it is.
Is it?
Yes, it is. Take it from someone in their 50s.
All
it's
right.
young.
But I think you got the geriatric thing from OBs saying that anyone over 35 is a geriatric pregnancy.
Yes, I remember when we started, growing our family, my wife and I, and some of our friends would laugh about the fact that anytime a woman was pregnant over the age of 35, it was called a geriatric pregnancy.
Yeah.
Certainly,
Bold move.
my 35-year-old wife was not hobbling around the house, pregnant.
No.
But there is something about a book that is certainly akin to giving birth, for sure. Yeah.
So congrats
Thank you.
on your book, baby.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the reason why you are our first guest on the show is the backstory is that Amy Poehler on her podcast had Viola Davis.
Yes.
And they had this really funny bit that got me laughing about poetry and about Shakespeare. And we'll play some of it on the show.
Here's the thing about Shakespeare. All it is people acting it and listening to it and going like this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. And we don't know what you're saying.
Well, here's the thing, too. And if you don't know what they're saying, then they're not doing it correctly.
Exactly.
See, but you can't say, you know what? It's boring.
But basically, they were just saying, like, no one actually knows what Shakespeare was saying. And no one knows what this poetry is about. Like, be so for real. Everyone hates poetry. And I would say, like, honestly, kind of true. But then that very week, I went to your poetry book release party and you read this poetry out loud. And I was like, oh, everyone doesn't hate that kind of poetry. Like there's something really magical about what you're doing. And also magical about in our theology and literature class, you really did introduce me to some of the first poetry that I understood.
Oh, wow.
Because listen, nobody does understand Shakespeare. Like, what's happening? I don't understand the words. And so you introduced me to that amazing falling poem. Do you remember where he falls out of the plane?
Oh, James Dickey, the flight attendant falls. Yes.
The flight attendant falling out of the plane. And it was so creative and brilliant how it was like happening. And then you also had this amazing poem you introduced us to where a guy was walking. I think he was like hungover from the night before and he was describing everything he saw.
Drunk prayer.
Yes, drunk prayer. And he was very depressed. And he looked at a rat squirming in the corner of a street corner. And he said when he looked at the rat, he realized that the rat wanted to live more than he did in this poem. And it was like all of these very visceral images for me that made me understand that all poetry, or that there is poetry for everyone. And that everyone probably doesn't hate poetry. They just haven't found poetry they like yet.
Yes.
And so that I'm really excited to be able to talk about. And then I sent your book to Lee. And he fell in love.
Oh.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed. Yes, congratulations on the great first collection. So I'm excited about the conversation today.
Awesome.
Can we just start by you reading a poem, please?
Sure thing, yeah. We'll crack open here the book to Crusade Against Rock. So I grew up.
That's what we want.
I grew up evangelical Christian, Southern Baptist in a small town in the upstate of South Carolina. And we would have these characters come through town about once a year called evangelists. You know, every head bow, every eye closed, 13 verses of Just As I Am. I see that hand. I see that hand, that sort of thing. So a real theatrical sort of feeling to the services. And a couple of times we had this guy who had figured out not only are you in danger of going to hell, but you're in danger of going to hell and secular music is what's taking you there. So this poem grows out sort of that experience and some of my own response to it. It's called Crusade Against Rock. The traveling evangelist with the permed mullet played Another One Bites the Dust Slow Down in reverse for our congregation. If we listened closely, he insisted, we could hear Freddie Mercury, who sounded now like Darth Vader, testifying to us all, it's fun to smoke marijuana. It's fun to smoke marijuana. We heard it nearly plain as day. The Lord isn't the only one who works in mysterious ways. The remedy must outdo the poison, the evangelist told us. The next night, I gathered up my own little stack of songs. Said goodbye to F.U. Don't Take It Personal. Adios Easy Does It. So Long Straight Outta Compton. The liner notes turned black beneath the melting plastic. The fumes of our youth group's burnt offering drifted on the wind. Maybe this was what God wanted. But even now, my heart aches to think about that moment the flames took hold of Bob Marley's legend. His head cocked, his eyes knowing, and all those dreads suddenly on fire.
So good,
So I assume this is a true biographical experience.
It is basically 2 to 3 episodes converging into one.
Conflated into one.
Because that particular permed mulleted evangelist who had been, he had the big conversion story, drummer in a rock band, woke up in a pile of his own vomit, with a Jesus appearing to him, knowing he needed to turn it around. So he came through twice. But what's interesting is the actual time I literally did burn my CDs in this little pile was sort of in the wake of, I think, his second visit when I preached the Wednesday night youth service.
How old were you?
I was 12 or 13. I started preaching when I was 12. I think 12, yes. And we went outside the youth group and I set my little rap album. It was mostly rap at that time for me as a junior high student. And I set them on fire. And it was really difficult to get them going. This wasn't the box, like this sad little pile of whatever Columbia House 12 for 1 penny I'd gotten back in the CD. So Savannah, there used to be these things called CDs.
I had CDs when I was young in elementary school.
Yes, you've seen them in museums,
I've
that
seen
sort
them in
of thing.
museums. Oh my God.
So when you think back to that boy, what do you see about him that is misguided, and what do you see about him that is honorable?
Oh my God, he was earnest.
Yeah.
He was very earnest. And I think I still love that about him. And I hope that, I believe that I've still held on to earnestness about what matters, So mostly when I think about that boy, I think I have compassion because I think he was put in a context where he felt a lot of love in his religious tradition, but also a lot of fear and anxiety and fear and anxiety that were sometimes manipulated by the preachers in that tradition, whether it was the pastor or whichever evangelist happened through town that particular year. So I think back on it sometimes and I'm like, is this religious trauma that I'm still living in the echo of? And I think there's something to that. But I also think the particular congregation I grew up in showed me so much love that there's enough redeeming love that all of those relationships, most of those relationships still matter. And I largely remember them fondly. But there are parts that still haunt me a little bit, the shadow of Nobo Daddy, the sort of monstrous version of God that I just can't quite believe in anymore.
Yeah. Something you used to say about your religious experience when you were my professor
Many years ago.
Many moons ago, I know, is that it was like a table, and this is how you helped us walk through our own religious deconstructions or whatever, was that it was a table and some of the food was good. You said that.
Pretty good.
That is pretty good. You need to write that one down.
Yeah, I'll be dang.
That's your next poem right there.
But that's what that hits me as, of you saying, there was some good stuff and there was some hard stuff too. But I always thought that analogy was beautiful. It stuck with me. To be fair, it has been 15 years since you taught me, and that still sticks out.
I love that. That's great.
Beautiful.
There's another one, Swallowing the Camel, that I think does a nice job kind of, I don't know, this contrast between maybe your faith these days and maybe a younger faith.
Yeah.
Oh, so
I'd love for you to read that one and then let's talk about it a bit.
Right. Swallowing the Camel. My faith is a gnat, my devotion a polished stone, my fears a dog whimpering. When I was a kid, Jesus talked to me just for the asking. The Son of God squeezed me in, made time in the evenings for all that twilight angst. Tonight, there's silence and its echo. There's waiting, like the feeling you get in the family room at the hospital when someone you love goes under the knife.
Do you find yourself, do you remember much about writing that particular poem?
A little bit. It's one of those, I think there's some of these poems that are, pretty immediately obvious, telling a story, and there's some that kind of take you into a little bit of a, not surreal, but a little different kind of world. And I think this is one of them. And I also think that analogy of someone going under the knife, I grew up with so much health problems in my family that sitting in a waiting room at a doctor's office is always going to be one of the sort of places I return, and sitting in the waiting room, the surgical waiting room. So I can vaguely remember the state of mind. That's a pretty old poem. Some of the poems in the book are kind of old, but I didn't really help you there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you think about, at least the way I read it, you're working with a sort of contrast between a young, earnest faith and a much older, much more subdued or chastened by reality kind of faith.
Yeah.
But I don't know, when you think back about that kind of contrast, do you long for the earlier and the simplicity of it, or even the naivete of it? I'm thinking of Paul Ricoeur, his famous line about that as you go through the deconstruction of modernism, and then on the other side, hopefully you come out with what he called a second naivete. And have you found your way to a second naivete, or do you wish that you had it, or what's it like?
It's all simple now.
Yeah.
But I think the kernel of that was there in the other version too, in the earlier chapters. So for me, it is about finding that. That's one thing that's so interesting to me, talking to people who are still in my tradition, or the way they respond to me. So I grew up Southern Baptist, sort of. I don't know that we have that much of a distinction now between evangelicalism and fundamentalism. I feel like they've just sort of merged, particularly Southern versions of evangelicalism. But you need a church historian on the show to talk about that. But I would say that my version of growing up would now be called evangelical, but would probably be a little more fundamentalist a little bit. But the essentials of the Baptist faith, as I experienced them and then stayed in them as a different type of Baptist for a while, emphasize the priesthood of all believers, emphasize soul competency, emphasize sort of, this notion that God cares about our individual souls, So the older I've gotten, the more I feel like I hold on to what were the stated fundamentals of the faith I was raised in, but some of the other parts have just burned away. So in some ways, I feel more Baptist, truly Baptist, a historical Baptist than maybe the version of it that I grew up in.
Yeah.
But there are parts of my faith that have been informed by, I've been tempted by Catholicism, like any thoughtful reader of Flannery O'Connor should be.
Hello.
But so I kind of call myself low church sacramental.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I define where I am or where I moved to.
Yeah.
But this also, I think that last stanza about sitting in the waiting room and it's God going under the knife almost. Instead of a chastened sort of thing, it's also the deeper and more sincerely you believe, the more biting your questions can be, the more hard they can be, and you can still have the comfort of believing that relationship of faith can not just sustain that, but will be enlivened and enriched by that sort of question asking,
Yeah.
So there is a sort of a deeper foundational thing that I hope I've grown into and I'm still growing into. Yeah.
Okay. May I ask a follow-up, Savannah?
Oh, please do. Yes.
So I don't know who Charles Simic is.
Oh, yeah.
But I saw that you'd written a monograph on poetics of uncertainty. And it does seem like obviously any poet's going to love ambiguity, right?
Yeah.
And the polyphonic form of words and so forth. And so
stop giving away our game, Lee. We're all one-trick ponies.
Yeah.
But how do you think you found your way from that sort of world in which certainty was in some ways equated with faith to someone who loves uncertainty and the playfulness of ambiguity?
Yeah, I think life did it to me. The day I graduated, I went to Baylor out in Texas for undergrad. I grew up in a little town in the upstate of South Carolina, the foothills of the mountains. Go out to Baylor. It was a good experience for me. Wonderful professors, much like Savannah had. And just waiting for the laugh track there. But the day I graduated, we found out my mom had cancer. And I was already asking questions, and I'd already learned from the pastor of the church I grew up at that my questions weren't welcomed or safe, as I'm going to college. And the way he told me, he said, be careful for your liberal religion professors.
Mm-hmm.
And
literally, I got the same warning. How funny is that?
nice.
I got that very similar kind of thing.
yeah.
when I
Oh,
went to
great.
college.
Yeah.
But this is Baylor. I mean, this is not a bastion of godless heathen, you know?
Yes.
So I learned my questions weren't welcome. So I was asking questions in college, and I was writing terrible poetry. I mean, the poetry was awful. So the day, we found out my mom has cancer. I'm supposed to start Princeton Seminary. She's moved to Long Island and was working in the city at that time. And my parents had divorced years before. But basically that summer, I take her to doctors where we find out what kind of cancer it is. We find out it's melanoma, and it's a terminal diagnosis once melanoma gets inside you. And so that happens, dealing with this, the dark night of the soul kind of language is what also is given to you when you go to seminary. You're going to lose your faith in seminary, that sort of thing. Dark night of the soul. And for me, seminary was a dark night of the soul, but it had nothing to do with German higher criticism. It had everything to do with the fact that my mom was dying and we were trying to keep her from dying. So that undid me. And September 11th happened, which if you were living in that area, it affected you more than the rest of the country. My mom saw the second plane hit from her office.
Oh, wow.
So it was a part of our world, and then I was in a car wreck. My body's messed up. So first semester of seminary is like boom, boom, boom. And I found myself suddenly really struggling to think academically. Academics had always come easily to me, big old nerd. But I found myself in a really difficult place. And I found that I could think with and through stories and poems. A good friend of me sent me Flannery O'Connor short stories. I keep coming back to O'Connor. That friend also, she was a friend from Baylor, also sent me George Herbert's poetry. And I started reading Walker Percy. I started rereading William Faulkner. And I wandered into other poets like Jane Kenyon and Yosef Komunyakaa, who I also shared in that class. And I found that I could think and sort of wrestle with my life and my spirituality in these stories and in poems. And I even started writing songs in it. It was all really strange. This is all happening within about a year and a half after kind of going into this dark place. So then at that point is where I found poetry and these other forms could hold those tensions that I was feeling. If you want to talk about ambiguity or negative capability, all the poets like to quote Keats as saying. So I think that's when poetry for me and songs and short stories at the time, even though I haven't written those in decades, became places for me to work out my spiritual life and to figure out what do I believe, what do I think, and also just to have containers to hold what all was going on inside me, it felt like.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah, I want to talk about your mom because that's what a lot of this book is about, is you processing your mom's passing. You have a poem called Grief. It's on page 28. I wondered if you would be open to reading that, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about the role of poetry as it relates to that process.
Oh, sure thing.
Yeah.
Grief. I've woken in strange places, face down on church pews and sidewalks, covered with dew in the grass of the graveyard, considered how the ocean washes the rocks below the cliff under moonlight. Those last memories still wound. The uncomfortable recliner I made a bed of in the hospital room, rubbing lotion on your swollen feet, whispering what I hoped you could hear. I love you, and it's okay when you need to leave.
I feel that when I'm reading these, it's like snapshots into these very intimate caretaking memories between you and your mother. And then there's also a longer poem that we can't read here, but that talks a lot about your mom's caretaking of you too, and that perspective. I'm just curious how you've been processing that role that you had in your mom's life towards the end and how poetry has played a part in that.
The role of caretaker
Yeah.
and how poetry played into that. I don't want to say most people, but most people you become caretaker for your parents somewhere in middle age. And people will often talk about you becoming a member of the sandwich generation. Have you heard that phrase? And it's where you're taking care of your parents or tending to their next steps in life, as well as tending to your children. And what's was different about my life is I became caretaker for each of my parents before I ever had a family of my own. And I'm trying to think here. My dad suffered from health problems my whole life. He became disabled about the time I was born. So early in my life, it was, is he going to live? Is he going to die? What's my role here to take care of him? If I'm at home alone and he has a seizure, what's my role if this or X or Y happens? And then when my parents divorced, and I ended up being caretaker for my mom. It was strange because it was a no-brainer that I would just put down whatever I was doing to help her. I don't think that was it doesn't feel altruistic. It just feels natural. And I remember at the time thinking, I'm grateful I'm in seminary right now, because I took a semester off during her second experimental treatment. She did experimental treatments at Sloan Kettering in New York City, up in Manhattan. And so I took a semester off. And at that point, I was like the house taker. And she was still trying to work, because for her at that point, giving up work meant that she was giving up life. And she never asked me to do this. I just did. And, what I would do during the day when she was at work is I would be reading novels and writing poems. And so the richest time early on for the incubator for a lot of what will become my writing life happened when I was caretaking. And I haven't thought about that connection. And I don't think I've answered your question.
You did answer my question.
Okay.
Yeah. Beautiful.
That's when a lot of that was happening.
Because you were so young.
I was young. Yeah, that was, I was 21 when the diagnosis happened. I think I was 23 or 24 when I took a semester off to live with her. And before she moved back south for the last year of her life. Yeah.
Is there any grief around that part of your life for you? Like, obviously the grief of losing your mother, of course, but just that you didn't get that part of your life too.
I think about that occasionally, but I've never thought of it until recently as something to grieve, because her life or death was so much bigger than my degree program,
Totally,
but it is strange because, you look back on college, you look back on this chapter of your life, and my entire seminary experience is colored by that. And I think those relationships were colored by that, because on free weekends, I would often be driving to Long Island to kind of check in and make sure everything's okay, instead of being where I was and developing those friendships more. But I've had a few people visit since then. And what's interesting, this is strange. This feels weird to say, so there's no whatever in this, but two friends in particular, years later, they come through Nashville and they say, I just want to apologize for not being there for you during this period. And I remember thinking, I never felt that you did or did not do anything. And so I think it's maybe just the nature of people who are pastoral to look back and go, I failed or something. But I never experienced those as failures. I look back and I think, my God, we were all so young trying to figure out life and how do you prepare yourself for ministry. But when you think about it, it's like, well, that did draw my attention away from nurturing those friendships. And I've never felt like anyone there in that community failed to be there for me. But I have always felt that there's a certain shadow over my experience at that time.
Yeah.
So that when my mom died, within 10 months, I'm in St. Andrews, Scotland, starting my PhD, and I came back to life there. So like that poem that I read, Grief, that first stanza really comes from my grieving in St. Andrews. Because there's no cliffside with rocks and the ocean in Inman, South Carolina,
right.
Or Princeton, New Jersey, for that matter. That's on the edge of the North Sea there in Scotland. So it is interesting how poems hold tensions within moments, but they also hold tensions across time.
Yeah.
You felt that in the other poem, the experience of the young boy being reflected through the older man looking back, and here some of these poems hold different time stamps in tension with one another.
Another kind of tension that kind of keeps surfacing, maybe just even in the title, "Holy is the Body," right? You have this sort of what a lot of times we presume is not holy, but mundane and carnal, and and yet you're wanting to say holy is the body, which relates to your what was the phrase you used a moment ago? Low church sacramental.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I love the line from Iris DeMent at the very beginning. There's a whole lot of heaven shining in this river of tears, and which is a beautiful line that I don't think I'd heard before, though I love Iris DeMent. And then I don't remember which poem it is, but you're, at least in one scene, you're lying in bed and you seem to be at this point kind of grieving, maybe not yet having a child. And then you're kind of coming in and out of prayer perhaps, and you say something like, you come to realize this is enough. And so this sort of, I don't know, this tension between grief and grace, and grief, the pain, and yet the beauty of all of that. So I don't know. Unpack or commentary on any of that.
Coming home to the body is it's a difficult thing for me, and I do feel like the rhetoric around the body growing up was shame filled.
Yeah, right.
Purity culture I grew up in, so even adolescent sexual thoughts were a cause for concern, and the most natural things were presented as problematic. But then when you start reading about the origins of our faith, you're like, well, Christianity actually pushes against these the philosophical body bad, spirit good sorts of things. So I think a lot of this book is me moving into a more comfortable relationship with my body, which I'm still working on, and just with the embodiment of ourselves and our loved ones. And even that poem with lotion on my mother's feet. Yeah, I remember not being comfortable at first doing that. And I think it's just where I was with my own body and bodies as a 20-something-year-old man. But my older brother, who I share with my mom, I saw him rubbing lotion on her feet. And I'm like, well, of course, this is what you do. You tend to one another's bodies. And I look back, I remember that memory sometimes with shame, and sometimes I think I remember it as, her feet were swollen from the progression of the disease and the lymphedema, I guess, from being in the bed. And so there was probably part of that was me not wanting to confront that her body is being distorted by disease. It's going to kill her within days at that point. So you have all of these tensions going on in your head. The poem you mentioned, maybe I read it. It's called Corpus.
Yeah.
And so it's literally, just a dead language word for body again. When God is silent late at night, and I'm watching the shadows the moon makes against the walls, I wish sometimes for certainty to know God like the fetal pig I dissected in high school, its legs tied back with twine on an aluminum tray, flesh obedient to the scalpel as I separate skin from meat, meat from bone, living silence from the silence of death. But I lie awake and listen instead to the wind-rustled leaves of the poplar, to the quiet breaths my wife makes as she lies here sleeping. And I pray or think to myself, which in these moments feels like prayer, oh, this is enough. This is more than enough. Yeah, that is grace there that you were saying. Yeah.
And it goes back to that grappling with certainty and uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
That very stark image of the way we want to treat perhaps our notions of faith comparable to the dissection of the frog, right?
Yeah.
Something that we can pin down, literally in this case, pin it down, right?
Yeah.
Do you think? Obviously, the whole notion of dogma, right, which is a bad word in our day and age, which I don't think should be a bad word myself.
Yeah.
But if we think of dogma as the claims that a given tradition has said, it seems right to us that these are ways of describing reality, right? But even once one has certain dogmatic claims, there's still the question of what do they mean, right? And grappling with what they mean. And so you can either take the approach of, well, we're going to pin it all down and dissect it and get it once and for all, or we're going to have ongoing conversations about this and ongoing While we can still hold on to certain sort of dogmatic claims, but still be grappling with what this all means. But I don't know. Thoughts on that? Pushback on that, or
I don't know. I think I like what you're saying. I remember reading in seminary, I think it was called Models of the Church, maybe, and I can't remember which. It was a Catholic priest who wrote it. You got that one? Is it Models of the Church? But basically talked about how different traditions define community, essentially.
Avery Dulles?
Avery Dulles, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I think he was a cardinal. I mean, that's big time.
It's big
Be a
time.
cardinal. Oof. You're picking popes at that level. I mean, you are picking popes, quite literally.
quite literally?
Yes. But if I'm not mistaken, when he talked about the Orthodox tradition in there, he said that the community is defined by who is at the table. And I remember thinking, that's great. Because so much of my Protestant upbringing had been who's in is who believes what
Right.
declarative statements. And none of our relationships that are particularly rich are based on anything so flagrantly vacuous as that notion. Real relationships are much more complex and based on a lot more than just, do you think this? Do you think that? And so I love that notion of you belong if you have chosen to belong, and you are you're moving into the mystery of Christ's body and blood. So to me, at that point, as a seminary student, I just thought, God, that's beautiful and that's amazing. And probably reading Flannery O'Connor at the same time, it's like, there's a sacramental character to all of our experiences. And then you read Paul Tillich, who says that the way we do communion is based on the emergency character of the nature of the church in this moment. We're to move towards a place where every meal is communion, you know? So I forget where, we were talking about dogma, who's in, who's out. Obviously, I think there are things we move towards believing, but a relationship is so much richer and deeper and more meaningful than, did you dot all the I's? Did you cross all the T's?
Did you burn all the CDs?
Did you burn all the CDs?
Or did you
while
hold one
keeping
back?
DC talk?
Yeah.
Is there one hiding in the back?
Except we have to burn those too now,
We do
don't
have
we?
to burn
We have
those now,
burn
too.
all the CDs. Amy Grant's still okay? Who's in and who's out?
Who knows? Is she in or not?
Oh.
Okay, I want to talk about the poem Holy the Body, which is what
Yeah.
the book is named
Oh,
after.
yes.
Let's start maybe by reading it, and then we can talk about what's inside.
Sure thing. What page are we on? There we are. I found it. Page 59. Page 59 for those of you listening who don't
Yes,
have the
for
book.
those of you listening. That's actually amazing.
For all the people who are going to go out and buy
Yeah,
your
there
book.
we go. I
That's
like
right.
that. Holy the Body. I've thought so little of you that now you seek your revenge in the grinding of kneecaps, the tightening of hamstrings, loss of elasticity, the skin. So long neglected, you weren't even an afterthought. I apologize each morning with a handful of pills. Oh, scarred flesh of me in the mirror, as I turn the page on another decade, I bless the stretch marks on my stomach, evidence of those dead years when food was my one friend. I bless the crow's feet at the corners of my eyes, proof of days spent under the sun. I bless the gray in my beard, reminder that sometimes, despite ourselves, wisdom appears. I bless our breaking down, dear body. Pray the process is slow, that when time confronts us with its choices, you'll teach me when to hold on, when to let go. Yeah.
Why did you name this book after this poem is my first question. Then I want to get into it.
I don't know. It just kind of struck me. I'd almost named it Sightings, but then I named the chapbook that came earlier that. I almost named it One-Eyed Jesus of the Sacred Heart, but thought that might be off-putting to some people. But I do think there's something about the title of that poem that you can see the threads of throughout the whole collection. So I think that's why. Not to lift up this poem to say, here's a book about my body, but about bodies and coming to understand and accept and appreciate our embodied lives as gifts in all the fumbling and pain and joy of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's especially the way that you talk about your mom's body and the health
Mhm.
journey. It feels
Yeah.
very related to her as well.
Yeah,
which
for
is
sure.
beautiful. I find it refreshing to hear a man talk about their body and their
Mhm.
relationship with their body. And I would
Yes.
love to just hear a little bit about what your journey has been like
I'm a big old boy. I don't know if you're watching the video
on
You-
Spotify
on
or YouTube.
on Spotify or YouTube, you can tell I'm a big old boy taking up all this chair. But if you're listening, you just have to take our word for it.
Exactly.
I mean, my experience with my body and struggles with it started young. My parents' marriage kind of imploded about the time I was 8. And they kind of hung in there for about 4 horrible, terrible years, making everyone miserable. And when I was a kid, I was angry about that.
Mm.
The older I've gotten, the more compassion I have. These are 2 people who had so much trauma in their lives, so much pain that there's nothing but grace for the fact that these 2 people made it 15 years and gave me life. And as parents, each of them gave me absolute unconditional love. Like, if I love my children half as well as my parents, then my children will be taken care of very well. I certainly hope, though, that my wife and I handle our marriage better than my parents did.
Yeah.
All that to say, I mean, I remember the summer I turned 8, I went from being 60 pounds to being 85 pounds. And that's not normal for a 8-year-old kid to gain, what's that, 40%, 50% of the body weight in a few months, And I remember eating, this was one of the times my parents had split up for a couple of weeks. I remember eating a microwave twice-baked potato. And I remember thinking as an 8 or 9-year-old kid, this doesn't taste good, but I like the way it makes me feel.
Yep.
And that should have been a clue that me and food are going to have a difficult relationship, So I've struggled with weight. I've struggled with probably the shame. And I think the purity culture didn't help with some of that.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you come into a healthy sexuality when all of the things that move you towards that are taught to be shameful? So just get a big old bunch of that mixed up together and throw in family and poverty and tailspin, throw in disabled father. Is he going to die now? Is he not going to die now? And then moving into my early 20s, my mother's diagnosis. So I don't, I sometimes love to quote St. Francis of Assisi. I don't know if he really said it, but I love that notion that he called his body brother, because the older I get, the more it just feels like it's this thing that it's steady, but sometimes you need to kick it up the hill. I don't know if you bleep brother in here. I've heard that Lee has a potty mouth. Is that true?
He asked.
The reviews say that, right?
McAbee texted me earlier and asked, am I allowed to swear on this show? I said, sure. I said, Lee does. We just bleep him out.
Speaking of shaming.
It becomes so natural.
Lee is a victim of his own show.
Yes.
Yes.
So that, there's wrestling with the body, and how do you love it and how do you appreciate it? And
So what's one of the things that I find certainly stood out to me is that you're being very forthright and vulnerable, like just in what you shared, obviously quite vulnerable, but you're doing that in multiple ways throughout this volume, right? You talk about the death of your mother, the death of your father. You talk about their divorce. You talk about the fact that your grandmother was abused. You talk about some miscarriages and some a miscarriage by your mother. Perhaps at least I'm assuming that at one point you're talking about perhaps some miscarriages that you and your wife suffered. How do you think about how one does that in public?
That's interesting. I think, so I grew up preaching. I grew up preaching from the time I was 12 or 13. I mean, really terrible first sermon, Ephesians 2, 8, and 9. You think you could really get gold out of that stuff? Free gift from God, but, it's really bad. So, and it happens so fast. If you ever preach, you prepare, you prepare. I mean, when you're a teenager and you're over in like 6 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And everybody's waiting on well, I mean, my preachers growing up were like 40-minute guys.
Yeah, same.
So then someone was like, oh, that was so short. So by God, next time I got up in front of the whole church, we went 45. I listened to a tape of that one time and wanted to just tear my ears out. Like it felt like penance to listen to my old sermon from when I was 16 or 17. It was not charming. No. God, I feel really bad. I want to apologize to everyone at Rock Hill Baptist Church in Inman, South Carolina, circa 1996 for that second sermon. Well, so I do think the sermons I listened to growing up taught me the power of language and the power of words. And there is something in my tradition about testimony and testifying.
Yep.
And so I wonder, because I've never thought about this until you asked this, I wonder if there's something about that coming in from my religious tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's obviously a tradition of confessionalism and American poetry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe those two things come together. I mean, not everything is totally autobiographical here, but like 98% of it is, 95%. So I think there is something about that telling of a story. And also the stuff that moves me is when someone is willing to take you to their darker corners, So it's the thing English teachers say over and over, the particular will move you towards the universal,
Yeah.
So hearing about a particular experience kind of hopefully helps a reader connect with that in themselves. And that Holy the Body poem, I didn't think about how it would strike listeners. And the first time I read it was in Scotland a couple of years ago when I was back over there, and a guy came up to me a day or so later and said, thank you.
Yeah.
And this was someone who was similarly shaped to me, shall we say, to put it delicately.
Yeah.
And he said, men don't write about these
They
things.
don't, yeah.
And I hadn't intended to do that,
Yeah.
but I was glad it found a reader that could connect with it. So I hope that experience happens for other readers,
I mean, it absolutely does. I think outside of the poem that you wrote about your mother, this is my favorite.
Oh, wow.
And just the way that you are engaging with your own body's history is really interesting. And with your tug of war relationship, it seems like with your body. And just as a man doing it, I don't know, it feels like an extra level maybe of vulnerability that I really just appreciate. I think for women, it's more common to express dissatisfaction with our bodies. But I think for you to do it in your stage of life with your gender, et cetera, I think it's just really, really moving. And so I find it to be really important. And I really love the poem.
Thank you.
McAbee, you just keep on impacting me decades later.
Well, I remember you complaining to me once. I wasn't going to bring that up.
Tell us about it.
Well, until we hired a proper person to teach faith and pop culture, till we hired old David Dark down there, I was the one who taught it. And I taught it. It was during an election year, so it was kind of fun. And you were in this night class, weren't you?
Probably.
It was like a fun freewheeling group, we'll just say. But I mean, we were reading H. Richard Niebuhr, Christ and Culture. We were reading some heavy, hard stuff. We read some Paul Tillich. And Savannah here, or Savannah, as I like to call her sometimes, came up to me. She's like, McAbee, you have ruined movies for me. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, since your class, I can't watch a movie without thinking about it. And I remember thinking, what she means for ill has turned out for good for me. Because that is what a teacher wants to hear. Not that we ruin things with our students, but that we make them more thoughtful.
I'm so pleased you ruined movies for her.
I'll bet she's forgotten what I said and got back to just enjoying movies.
No, genuinely, I haven't. I mean, this whole entire show, the premise is talking about pop culture through the lens of theology and ethics and philosophy, which literally is exactly that.
Yeah.
So we just go through movies and TV shows, and in this case, poetry, and talk about them through these series lenses. So actually, McAbee, maybe this is a full circle moment where you created the subtext.
I look forward to my residuals.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to enough income so that there could be some residuals.
Yes.
So true.
Yes.
Well, it's very appropriate that you would be our first interview guest, conversation guest. So, thank you.
I'm so happy that you're
lovely to be
here.
with you.
Oh,
and you're one of those people that we've crossed paths a number of times in Nashville.
Yeah.
But I always thought, I bet I would really enjoy getting to talk with you.
Yes.
So I'm glad that we have gotten to initiate this new season of our relationship.
I love
Cute.
that.
A new
Thanks so much.
chapter. Everyone go get Holy the Body by Donovan McAbee. And Maccabee, do you want anyone to follow you somewhere? Like, or, I know you're doing your socials at the moment.
Dancing Monkey, I am.
Yes.
I'm on
you gotten a
Instagram. I'm on the,
Substack?
but I have to add the to it, right? So that I sound appropriately old. I'm on the Facebook.
Okay, nice.
I'm on the Instagram. I left Twitter because it was just getting too dark,
It is
even
dark
for
out
me.
there. It's dark
Even
out
for
there.
me.
Yeah.
But Instagram, Facebook. I think I have a TikTok account, but it's sort of vacant at the moment.
Wait, not a great sales pitch.
No, it's not. No.
But there aren't many Donovan McAbee. So
No.
if you just Google, I think you can get there.
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook. That's where I'm hanging out.
And that's
and my website.
MCABEE.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank y'all for having me. This was good.
Great to have
Thanks so
you.
much.